Hello, welcome everyone to another episode of the Virtual Ninja Show. Today I have Clay with me. Clay, I'm super excited to have you finally on the show. Please introduce yourself.
Ika, thanks so much. Like honestly, this has been something I've been looking forward to. I'm glad that I'm finally able to get our schedules lined up so that I can actually come onto your show and really looking forward to talking to you today. So I'm a principal architect, part of the Intune product group. But one of the other roles that I've been playing for the last few years is I actually lead our Zero Trust deployment V team and a lot of our Zero Trust efforts, specifically around devices and device protections with you know, a Zero Trust mindset at Microsoft.
Yeah, and before we get into the topic, which is the workshop that you developed together with your team, um, can we start by explaining a little bit about how Microsoft approaches zero trust?
Sure. So, Microsoft has taken a simplified approach to zero trust. If you go look at like a lot of the other zero trust sources out there, like the Open Group, for example, which by the way, a lot of Microsoft employees actually sit on the board and are members of the Open Group, but they have broken it down to 10 or 11 commandments for zero trust. And you see that pretty much everywhere. And at Microsoft, we condense those down to what we call our three principles for zero trust. And the simplicity is just a way for us to be able to tell the story easier. And I really do feel like it works. And if you look at these three principles, the first is verify explicitly. This one is fairly self-explanatory, but it's constantly validating every single authorization, attempt, every identity, every device, making sure it's healthy at all times before they're able to access corporate resources. And at Microsoft, this is really our conditional access story with intra-conditional access and things like Intune compliance policy, where we can actually enforce this. The second is least privilege access. And this is one that, I've been talking about least privilege access for 18 years. It's been around for forever. And to me, even though it's been around the longest, it's actually the hardest to implement in practice. And that's because it has the most impact on your end users. Finally, assume compromise. Assume compromise is basically just limiting your blast radius. It's saying, hey, at some point, I am going to get successfully attacked. And a intruder is either going to get access, either full or partial, to a identity or to a device. And I just need to make sure that I'm not letting them pivot to other resources. I need to make sure that, I'm basically stopping them in their tracks. And as I said, limiting your blast radius in the event of a breach. And then the last one, you'll see it's not actually bolded and it's kind of hidden there. And that's because this is not an official Microsoft principle, but I like to call it, a Clay principle. And this is securely enable the business. And, to me, I've done now hundreds of deployments with customers, with Zero Trust and in the Zero Trust framework. And what I found is that you have to really have all three units of business, security, and IT working together. And if you don't, honestly, I've seen it fail. And it's
Hmm.
really important to have these three groups talking together and not just a one-way street. There's a lot of different back and forth here. It's not just the fact that if you turn security controls too tightly, that your end users are going to suffer. But it's also, the business needs to tell IT and security, what are my most important assets? What are the things that are really going to cause me reputational harm if they were to get accessed by an intruder? And that's where you have to have this two-way communication and have all three of those groups working together. And if you do, it will be successful.
Hmm. We will talk about this a little later again as well. So, zero trust is really also a very strong word. So when it's zero trust, how can I trust you? How can I trust Microsoft? How can I trust a Word document? Like it's zero trust.
I knew
Like,
you were going to ask the hard questions. It's really more about zero assumed trust. And the fact of the matter is, zero assumed trust doesn't have the same ring to it as zero trust. And it's just zero trust is just more catchy. But it really is about zero assumed trust. It's about not making, false assumptions. And, it's basically, once again, constantly verifying trust. And instead, we
mm,
used to have the phrase trust but verify. And it's at that point it was a hey, once you verify once, it's okay. But now it's about verifying explicitly. It's about constantly verifying, all those authorization attempts, everything that's going on in your environment to make sure that can be trusted, throughout the entire, access period.
But I know we talk about ZT, but if we had the zero assumed trust, we had Z, like a nice new acronym.
Until just now, I've never thought about that, but that's also a great point. And that's, yep.
So I know you worked a lot on the NIST framework as well, with, of course, zero trust deployment. Can you tell me a little bit about it and how that zero trust fits into that NIST framework?
Sure. So
Whoa.
yeah, exactly. We actually worked with NIST very closely, and myself, Tarek Daiwu, many others, across Microsoft, we actually met with NIST sometimes, anywhere from 3 to 10 times a week, and starting back in 2023. And we worked with them to actually help them build out their zero trust story and their zero trust lab. And, one of the things that stood out was our broad coverage across zero trust. I mean, as you see here on this slide, there is no other competitive vendor out there that even comes close to us when it comes to our coverage across all the pillars and across all these areas of zero trust. And we actually even used our learnings with NIST to figure out where we had gaps. And you'll actually see some new products on here that weren't there when we started, and those actually came about when we started saying, hey, NIST is saying we need this thing, and it is something we probably need to focus on. So let's go build that product. And some of these products were actually developed after our engagement with NIST started, when we started filling in these gaps, and we're constantly doing that today.
So when I look at this packed slide, there is a lot of areas like resources, and then there is products protecting those resources. And when I think about customers going like, yeah, let's go zero trust, how can they turn all of this on? I think it's so complex and so complicated. And this is where your workshop comes in. I read a lot about it. And maybe you want to tell us a little bit how this workshop
Sure.
works.
So honestly, like you hit the nail on the head. It's something that we started noticing. We started going through, and I'll just give you a little backstory here. We started telling this very simple story about zero trust about 5 years ago. And we basically said, hey, zero trust is simple. And we broke it down into these 6 pillars and, identity, devices, data, apps, infrastructure, and network. And we said, here's 6 pillars. And we did a bunch of hand wavy stuff, and we were like, okay, go do it. And, you know, turns out that zero trust is a lot more complex than that. And, this is a slide, I call this the spaghetti slide, but, it honestly shows the complexity of, implementing an actual security story. And this is a very popular slide. This is called our MCRA, or Microsoft Cybersecurity Reference Architecture Diagram. You can get to it at aka.ms/MCRA. It is popular with our customers. In fact, it's so popular, someone actually made a bed sheet out of it and called it their security blanket and said, this is so important, I feel like I need to sleep with it at night. And I thought that was a little weird, but at the same time, it does show, how important this is. At the same time is that it also shows the complexity. And every single one of these boxes, Heike, could actually have anywhere from like 50 to even 1,000 steps. And we
Wow.
started looking at this and we said, we have a problem here. And we started writing down all the steps involved with zero trust in a spreadsheet. We got to over 2,000 items, and we weren't even close to halfway done yet. And we were like, okay, we have a real problem here. Like, how are customers supposed to actually go do this? And so that's where the Zero Trust Workshop was born. That's actually what started this. And we basically said, hey, we don't have a great deployment story. We can't just give a customer a list of 2,000 items to go do and say, hey, go do it. We need to come up with a way to actually make this a process, and to actually give you a starting point, and to have goals, and to actually measure your progress along the way.
So then, Clay, how is that workshop going? Are customers coming to you? Are they meeting in a classroom? Are you going to them? Or can they run it by themselves? Do we have partners? So how is the workshop being delivered?
Great question, Heike. And honestly, the answer to all those questions is yes. It's something that as we've developed and as we have started going through this, we, honestly fought really hard to make this one, a free offering, two, an open source offering where anyone can edit it and make changes, themselves. But we've also wanted to make it publicly available. So
Mhm.
today you can actually go to aka.ms/ZT workshop. It doesn't matter if you're a Microsoft employee, if you're a customer, if you're a partner, you can all access the workshop from that URL. And the great thing is that, when we design this, we've actually made it, easy to edit. We've made it where you can walk through this on your own. We do actually offer this as a delivery at Microsoft. Right now, we're working on our scale motion. We have a very small number of customers that we run through this with today, but we're actually scaling out to our fast track program now. And we've also started partner training. And we actually have a lot of our deployment partners that have already started using this workshop on their own to actually walk through the same thing with their customers. So actually helping their customers deploy zero trust using our tool. And we are 100% okay with that. We honestly want partners to use this and to help us make it better.
So this is great that actually it can be delivered by partners or customers can do this. How does it work? When I go
Yeah,
to the
great.
website, then what's next?
Great question. So once you're there, you'll notice that we've actually broken down the workshop into two pieces. And the first is an automated portion where you actually can come in and run a PowerShell module on your environment.
Zero trust play, zero trust. You can't just trust a PowerShell script.
Yeah, great point. We do have the permissions listed. I will say it's read-only permissions that are required, but you can actually go run this PowerShell script that's going to just pull down information in a read-only manner from your environment that's going to actually give you great information and basically give you this high-level overview about, what your environment looks like today on your zero trust journey. I will say that to
Mhm.
me, this is probably the least important piece of the workshop because this is the least detailed piece, but it's a great starting point. And I'll
Mhm.
also tell you, this is, sneak peek. We are actually in the process of version 2 of the assessment tool, which is going to have over 100 checks that's going to do in your environment. And a lot of this is based on what we call our Secure Future Initiative, our SFI learnings internal at Microsoft. So we're going to actually be improving this greatly over the next month to 2 months.
Do they need something specific? Is this all written out on the documentation? Like, do they need admin rights to
Yes.
read all of this? Can this be like a user? This is all specified.
So all of the rights that are needed to run this are all included on the website. We actually even have an instructional video that walks you through step by step on how to run the tool. The other thing I'll call out is that we don't get access at Microsoft to any of this data unless you share it with us. If we
Mhm.
were to do a workshop in person, this is only for you. So when you run that tool, no one is going to have access to that unless you give them access to the output from the tool. And the other thing I'll just call out really quickly is that it's also going to even, take all of your policies and do a dump of your policies for both Intune and Intra. So you can actually then go and do what I think is one of the most important pieces of IT today, and that's hygiene on your policies. And it's something that, as I've started going through these workshops, one of the biggest learnings for me is that, policy hygiene is hard when it comes to security, and customers don't know, that a policy that they set 5 years ago and was possibly set by someone who no longer works at their company probably needs to be updated every 3 to 6 months. And being able to go and run this tool and actually see, hey, I probably need to go update that minimum operating system version to a more recent one. Or, hey, I didn't even know that this new feature was available and I see I don't have it set, I probably need to go set that in my tenant. And it's something that has just come up over and over again in working through these workshops
Mhm.
is that, hygiene is important and it's something that is very difficult to keep up with. So having this tool to check and run through every 3 to 6 months has been a great help for our customers.
Yeah, it's the cleanup, it's the merging policies because you just set up a new one, or a new team does something. So I understand. Luckily, we also have Secure Score, which could help with like what is missing besides, especially when it comes to the specific settings. Um, but now let's talk about the manual approach, because this was the automated one. You run a PowerShell script. It gives you a lot of details. And then we have the manual part.
Exactly. And to me, this is really the most important part of the workshop. And you can go download this Excel spreadsheet, and a lot of people say, wait, what is an Excel? And yes, it's an Excel. But I will also tell you, it's actually been called the seventh wonder of the Excel world. And people have just been blown away that we were actually able to pull this off in Excel. And I will just call out really quickly to Meryl Fernando, based out of Australia. He's part of our identity architect team. And a lot of this was his vision, and a lot of this was, his work that actually made this possible in Excel. We started out trying to build an app, and we were like, you know what? Merrill said, "Hey, let's try this in Excel," and what he's come up with is just fascinating. And it's something that is not only easy to use, it's something that you can actually edit on your own. If you want to change one of the boxes, you can actually just go do that because it's in Excel. But it also makes it very easy for us to be able to share it, to be able to pull data into other sources. And it's something that I think that you'll really appreciate as a customer. That hey, this is actually done in something that I can go edit myself, and there's a lot of other reasons as well, which we'll get to in just a second. But
Uh,
yes, the manual part of this workshop, this is what it looks like. This is an example from the devices section. And if you look down at the bottom, you'll see that we've actually divided up into pillars. And
hmm.
so, these pillars are, not product based. This really could be done, with any third party product. You could actually go through and do these same checks. The one call out I'll say there is some of these are named after our product names in the actual boxes above. But, at the same time, it's something that you could translate over to any third party product and use it there. But, it is today based on the pillars.
So I'm talking about the pillars. You usually have in bigger organizations different teams. A team is responsible for
Correct.
securing devices, managing IT devices. Then there is a group that cares about identities. And we talked about this at the very beginning. You were saying like people need to talk to each other. How do you make them talk to each other?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that has really come out of these workshops as well. We really recommend for these workshops, just for the devices, for example, that you not just limit it to your device admins, to your MDM admins. You also want to have your identity admins in there. You're going to want to have some of your network admins in there. In some cases, you want to have your infrastructure and apps admins in there. And it's something that what we found is that if you don't have those people in the room, then you're not going to have all the answers as you go through this. So it's actually really great to start, with all those people in the room. And we actually have a list on the website of who should be present during each of the workshops. And as I said, it just really helps with the conversation. And as we start going through this, what I've also found is that, if you're in a room together, going through this as a group, there's a lot more back and forth. I will say that, most of the deliveries that I personally give are remote deliveries, and that's totally okay. But we don't get as much back and forth. And I think a lot of that is because some of that's occurring behind the scenes in teams. But I will say that the best workshops are definitely when you can get people in a room, lock the door, and say, hey, we're not going anywhere until we get this done. And it really does work. It really does bring out conversation, and you have teams talking together that a lot of times probably haven't talked about these things in years, but you start to realize that, it's a group effort. It's not just one team that's doing this. It's something that everyone needs to participate in.
So, Claire, I'm not going to ask all the things like where to start, because I think it might be different from company to company, or maybe the Zero Trust workshop gives them exactly that's the roadmap where you should go. But I see from the products, not everything that we have is currently listed there. So, is your team expanding the workshop to other products in the future?
That's a great question. And you definitely noticed the right thing. And right now, it's only for devices, for identity, and for data. And The answer is we actually have already built some of the other pillars. So we're getting ready to release the workshop for both infrastructure and network. In
Oh, wow.
fact, we've actually already started testing those with customers, and we're getting ready to release it publicly on the website in the coming weeks. And then after that, we will focus on some of the final remaining areas around some of our, security products, as well as, our apps pillar as well are going to be a big focus area for us in the coming months.
So I assume that there will be a new Excel version when there is new products coming. And even though it doesn't look like Excel because this is so beautiful and just see the icon. So, but how do customers use that tool? Like all these little boxes. Tell us a little
Yeah,
bit.
so great question, and let's just walk through that really quick. So basically, as I said, you'll notice at the bottom that it's divided up by pillar. So you'll just click either the devices or identity pillar, whichever one you're starting with for that day. And then you're going to notice that in the side panel, you're going to see that it's actually broken up by intuitive problem areas. So we basically have broken this down. Like for devices, for example, you'll see a section for MDM for Windows, a section for MDM for iOS, a MAM section. For identity, you're going to see a user identity section. You're going to see a security section on securing your identities. And we've broken it down by problem area. And then inside of the actual spreadsheet, you're going to see a lot of little boxes, and all these boxes have their own category. And the really cool thing here is that for each one of these boxes, you can actually click on them and it's going to take you to documentation where we actually explain, each of these concepts to you. We have links to, different MVP blogs and our internal Microsoft documentation on each of these items. You'll see things like screenshots. You're going to see slides for some of the boxes. And as an FYI, we're in the process of redoing a lot of those boxes and adding a lot more content. So in actually the next 30 to 60 days, you're going to see a ton of new documentation and content. And the really awesome thing is that we've started recording videos for each one of the boxes. And we've already got around 8 of them for devices recorded by one of my colleagues, Jason Sandys. We've just started on the MAM section where we're going to have, for mobile application management, we're going to have little video clips for each box that's going to walk you through how you could talk to, your customers or to your own team about these items, things that we think that you should, think about as you're going through this. And you're actually going to have a video option for each box in the spreadsheet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but we think it's important, and we've had such a positive response from customers when we do these in person that we want to make sure that everyone has the same opportunity to hear how we talk about these, as we go through the Zero Trust workshop with our own customers.
Wow. Yes. So, and then the videos will also be a link behind each box that they
That's
can.
correct.
Okay. Mhm.
Yep, they'll actually be embedded in the docs page. All the docs are hosted on GitHub. If there's something you don't like on the docs, you can actually submit a GitHub change request. We triage those every Tuesday. So once again, we're trying to make this open source and allow our community to get involved because we really, understand that we're not, we don't know everything. And we
Our
really
community.
do want to make sure that our customers' voices are heard. And so we actually made it to where you can actually submit your own requests to change our docs if you think something could be said in a better way.
Big love to our community. Please help. This
Yes,
is,
please.
yeah.
And that's for partners and customers. It doesn't matter. Like honestly, we want to hear from you. We really do. So we talked about each one of these boxes having a link. So as you go through this, what you're going to do is actually click the drop down box. You'll see that each one of these boxes has a drop down menu. And when you click on that, you're going to be giving a lot of options. And what's available in those drop down menus, it's things like where you are on that particular item. So as you walk through this, you're going to say, hey, this is already planned. It's in progress. You'll see buttons like follow up. And those are usually if I'm walking through this and I say, hey, I actually don't know a lot about this. I haven't implemented it yet. So I'll mark it as a follow up and I'll say, hey, I need to have a follow-up session if I'm a partner that's giving this workshop, or if this is me as a customer going through this, I can say, you know what, I need to have a follow-up with my team, or just this is a note to me to go back and actually go see if I need to implement this today in my environment, and go through change control process, etc. And so you can actually mark each one of these items. If you're using
Mm.
like a first party product or a third party product, you can mark those here. We have a lot of different options for you to be able to mark your progress. And the goal is to eventually get to green and mark them all as completed as you walk through the workshop on your own.
So everybody starts with all black,
Yes, they start
right?
with all black, not started, and that's the way it starts. And then
Hmm.
you go through and manually change each one of these boxes on your own, or as a partner, you're marking these for your customers as you have the conversation.
This is so cool.
So some of the other questions that I get asked are, is it possible to take notes? And there's actually two different ways that I've seen people take notes here. And the answer is yes, you can. And so for each one of these boxes, when I'm walking through this with the customer, I actually add a comment. And so I just click new comment. I type my notes in the comments. And that way, when I'm done, when I give the customer the handout at the end, all the notes are right there, and they can click on each box and see all the notes for each section right there in the comments section in their document. The other way that I've seen this done is through, notes, and you can actually add a sticky note for each one of the boxes instead. If you don't like the comments, you can use sticky notes. And some of my coworkers prefer to use the sticky notes. I just happen to prefer the comments, but there's different ways you
But
can do it. Because it's in Excel, it's honestly just, it's very easy to do. And it's
I
something
was
that,
just about to
yeah,
say, there we have the beauty about having it in Excel, because you have all the collaboration tools in it, sticky notes,
exactly.
comments, whatever. Awesome.
Yep. And the other thing I'm going to call out is that, as we're going through this, I also get asked, like, well, I don't know if I have the license. I don't know what license I need. And so now we've actually added little boxes that say, hey, this particular item requires Intune P2 or Identity Intra P2 or Intune Suite or Intra Suite. And we've actually, marked each box with a tinier box that tells you what license requirement is actually needed for these. And just a little bit of a private preview as far as, what's coming. We're also looking at ways where we could actually tag these items to show you which of these are a part of the NIST framework for zero trust, or
Hmm.
CIS benchmarks, or the Australian Essential 8, or the European Union regulations. We're looking at ways that we can actually add boxes either here or at least the documentation to be able to tell you which ones of these items are most important for those regulatory bodies.
I actually want everybody to just go out now and download that Excel spreadsheet and start changing from not started to in
Yeah.
consideration or completed, or like even for themselves to have an amazing overview of how their infrastructure looks like, their services. And yeah, wow. So those were my final words. Go download. What are yours?
Same thing. Honestly, go download the workshop today. Like, we really want to get your input. We want to see if it works for you. Please let me know if not. There's actually quite a few different ways that you can submit your feedback from the website. You can actually submit changes to GitHub. You can submit feature requests. If you're a partner and you're running this with your customers, you can actually say, hey, I'm going to go fill out this form and tell Microsoft that, yes, I'm actually running this with my customers. So there's a lot of different feedback forms available on the website, and we really do want you to just go try it out. If you get stuck, please let me know, because we want to fix it. And, Heike, I can't thank you enough for having me on the show today to let everyone know about this. And, it's something that I, am very passionate about, as you can probably tell. And we really do think that this is a way to actually transform the way our customers are doing zero trust deployments.
Yes, I'm so excited still that you are on the show now. And I couldn't have asked anyone better to join for this topic, because you are so passionate about it. I can feel it through the laptop. Um, Thank you so much. I hope everyone out there also enjoyed this episode and already started to grab that Excel spreadsheet and start working on your zero trust journey. It's a journey. It will take time. If you have feedback, use the feedback that's here on the screen. You can also add comments below the video. And I hope I see everyone again soon. Bye.